Welcome back to Reviews with Elaine, because I have opinions. Today's opinions will be about This Poison Heart by Kalynn Bayron. So before I dive into this review, I want to just say I was super excited for this book. I had really high expectations, partially because this cover is just absolutely gorgeous, but also I saw this book as a recommendation on another book reviewer on YouTube, and I will admit I don't remember much of the review or even who recommended the book, because as soon as I saw that this was a book I probably would want to read, I turned off the review. I like to go into books as blank as possible. But in case you don't, or have already read it and are just wanting my opinion on it, This Poison Heart is the story of Briseis, a teenage girl with a secret. Plants love her. She walks by trees and they lean towards her. She touches flowers and they brighten up. She can grow a rose bush almost instantaneously from a single bud. Her moms know about this, and they love her enough that they opened a flower shop so she can always be surrounded by the plants she loves. But Briseis has spent most of her life hiding this ability from anyone else. Then one day her family gets a call. Briseis was adopted, and the last living member of her birth family has just died. She stands to inherit the family home in the middle of nowhere just outside of this small picturesque town upstate. This comes right in the nick of time because their rent is going up and they are not sure they're going to be able to keep their apartment and flower shop. Briseis isn't so sure about moving out there with all those trees and plants to a place that she really will not be able to hide what she can do. But maybe, just maybe, she'll find a place that she doesn't have to hide what she can do. And with it, a connection to the birth family that she knows nothing about. So I was super disappointed not to absolutely love this book. There are a lot of things in the positive column on this one. I love the concept, I love the mythology, I love the fact that there's a lot of Greek mythology, but also reference to the fact that much of Greek mythology was probably picked up from older stories. I love the themes of history being rewritten to demonize women, mythology as real stories adapted into cultural touchstones, the complex emotional connections of adopted family, blood, and heritage, and the need to be true and honest about who you are. I love the setting of a small northeastern town and a beautiful old house surrounded by a secret garden. I love the fact that it's a book that's inclusive without that being the entire point. Like, there are some books that are about representation. They are all about what it means to be a member of an underrepresented group. And those books are good, and they serve a purpose. But it's also important to have books that just include happy gay couples, and bisexual teens, and black families, and adoptive families. And I love that this book did this. I love the fact that it's a book full of a variety of different kinds of strong female characters. I love the fact that it features non-Christian spiritual practice without the assumption that those practices are somehow evil. I love the fact that it features a platonic relationship between a boy and a girl where neither show romantic or sexual feelings towards the other. I love the fact that this book acknowledges that teenagers do have sexual feelings, but it doesn't go into that uncomfortable place where I suddenly feel like I'm reading about erotica for teens. I like the fact that we have a main character who is independent, intelligent, kind, mature, but also still clearly a teen. There is a lot to love in this book. But I did not love this book. My biggest problem was with the rhythm of the book. This book felt like it was moving too quickly for most of the narrative. And I know, it's YA, and that means usually less words to cover the same amount of story. YA doesn't always take the time to be carefully painting out the setting, to really break down the POV characters' emotions and thought processes. There's often a lot less backstory, less world building, less general description and introspection. But I think that just dismissing that as a simple requirement of the age bracket is a cheap excuse. YA has plenty of room to make the writing feel deep and full. Even middle grade, which has a lot less words available to build the story, can manage an impressive amount of depth by working a bit more like poetry. Simple language and images can deliver a punch of information and feeling. But sometimes, there's just something that doesn't click. The author only uses one detail to set a scene, and it's just not an exceptionally evocative detail. We only see one sentence of our hero's thoughts, and it just doesn't really impart how their feelings get from point A to point B. We get to see a bit of backstory, but it doesn't really reveal anything that hadn't already been learned. And I feel like this book had a bit of that problem. We learned that Bryces likes horror movies, which could have been a lovely character building fact. But the problem is, we've already seen 2 separate references to Get Out and Us, so that bit of detail doesn't give us anything really new. We learn there are 4 trails leading off into the woods, but we only spend time with one, so why did we learn about the others? We skim over getting to know Carter, but we see entire conversations with Nix, which leaves me with a much stronger attachment to the less important character. It's just a problem with the author drawing the attention to the wrong details. On top of that, the entire book reads at roughly the same pace. There are a lot of things that you can do to make writing read more quickly or more slowly. You can change the length of sentences, paragraphs, and scenes. You can include more or less dialogue. You can include less or more adjectives, adverbs, and descriptive clauses. You can use larger and smaller words. And generally, you want to, for example, speed up the storytelling to make action scenes feel more like things are moving too fast and out of control. Or conversely, slow down the storytelling to get a slow-mo fight scene kind of feeling. You generally want the exposition to read slower, so the reader can absorb all the important details, but you generally want meet-cute conversations to read quickly and smoothly, so that the characters seem to click with each other. And this book reads at almost the exact same pace throughout the entire thing. The dramatic action-y climax reads at exactly the same pace as Bryces just exploring the garden. This made for some really awkward transitions as well. There was one where something really violent and sudden happens, immediately followed by an emotionally honest conversation. And there was nothing to really signal that we were switching between the two. It made for a jarring read, but also the fact that the rhythm of the book is very samey means that the reading itself started to feel far more boring than it should have for such a quick-paced, easy read. The climax also fell a little bit flat for me. A small spoiler here, but the ending is a bit of a deus ex machina. No, not a bit. It is a deus ex machina. Which, if you've missed that term, it translates to God from the machine, and it's a term for when the climax of a literary work culminates in an outside power appearing out of nowhere to resolve the conflict. And there's a reason that deus ex machinas have fallen a bit out of favor. In the modern era, we generally look for stories where the protagonist has agency. We like to imagine heroes who can change the world, and a deus ex machina takes that power and gives it away to someone or something that we have no real emotional connection to. I also felt the characters weren't exactly fully realized. Like Bryces and her moms, I felt like I really knew them. But Carter, Marie, and all the others, I just didn't quite feel like I knew them. A part of that was I feel like the author was trying to set up a back and forth, do we trust them or not kind of feeling. But some of it was just... we were told that Carter was really awkward, but other than him being clumsy, I didn't really see anything exceptionally awkward from him. Though I do love, side note, that for once it's a male character whose defining trait is being hella clumsy. That's almost always a trait given to female characters. But if we were trying to set up a maybe Bryces shouldn't trust these people feeling, it falls a bit flat when the protagonist never notices a single red flag about any of them. And on that note, there were a good number of times that revelations were made multiple times, or were just so obvious that it felt like they'd been made multiple times. One that comes early enough in the book that I think it doesn't count as a spoiler, so I can get away with talking about it pretty openly. Bryces remembers a time that, as a little girl, a friend dared her to eat some berries that turned out to be poisonous. Both girls had some, but only Bryces was unharmed by them. And I thought this was the author very clearly telling us that she is aware that she is immune to poisonous plants. And yet, there are 2 more times where she finds out she's immune to poison. And it's not like one of those, oh, I'm nervous because I'm not entirely sure that this is true, and if I'm wrong, it could be very disastrous, kind of thing. No! She just seems completely shocked. Like, it has never occurred to her in her life that she could be immune to anything each time this happens. And things like this happen multiple times throughout the book. There were also some stupid small things that I probably shouldn't dwell on, but they annoyed me. One of the tropes that I just find overdone is the idea that all teenagers are inherently embarrassed by their parents. Like parents just existing in public is somehow enough to make teenagers blush and run away. And maybe I was a weird teenager, but I was never really embarrassed by my mom. Like, if she was doing something weird, that could have been embarrassing for her, but not for me. I am fully aware, even as a teenager, that what my mom does is not me. And Bryce is repeatedly as embarrassed by her moms when they are just being pleasant human beings. Like, there are a couple of things they do that could be faintly embarrassing, but that is treated as no differently than when they're just inviting Carter over for breakfast. Also, I get Bryce's and her mom's not wanting to leave the city, their business, and their friends. I get that the whole moving into the family home of the birth parents of the adopted daughter could have a lot of emotions behind it. But who the fuck would not be excited to inherit a house that is fully paid for with the taxes already taken care of? Like, especially when their rent is growing up so dramatically that they're saying that the only possibility might be them all moving in a family of 3 into a single bedroom apartment. I understand thinking it's too good to be true. I understand a queer black family being unsure about moving to a rural area because, yes, there is a perception that rural America is not exactly welcoming to lesbians or black people. But I simply cannot wrap my head around seriously considering not even driving out to see the place. Then they arrive at what is described as a lovely, older, very large house with an attached shop on acres of land full of antiques that I cannot stress to you enough, they do not have to pay a penny for, and they consider refusing the place the very first night because they saw a stranger in the driveway. What? Like, are you serious? I know not everyone is in the same financial position I am, but I am pretty sure there are very few people in America who could afford to turn down that kind of opportunity in this housing market. But yeah, this book did not quite work for me. And I really hate that it did not, because it has the bones of a really great book. Because of that, I feel like a lot of my problems might not be a problem for everyone else. So yeah, if you like the premise and aren't bothered by the things I've talked about here, maybe This Poison Heart is the book for you.